Today, we are breaking down one of the most fascinating and, let's be honest, mind-bending arguments for the existence of God. It's an argument that takes us right to the cutting edge of modern physics and asks some of the biggest questions we can ask.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a little thought experiment. Imagine you're watching a poker game and one player gets a royal flush. You'd probably think, wow, incredible luck, right? But what if they got another one? And then another one? What if they got a royal flush 10 times in a row? At that point, luck isn't the first word that comes to mind. You'd be pretty sure the game was rigged.
Well, here's where things get really interesting. Modern science has discovered that our universe is a lot like that poker game. The fundamental laws and numbers that govern physics are balanced on an absolute razor's edge. The odds of them being just right for life to exist are, well, they're so small it's hard to even wrap your head around. This is the heart of what's called the fine-tuning argument, and it's so powerful that even some of the most prominent atheists have called it a truly formidable idea.
So let's actually dive into the evidence. Just how staggering are the odds we're talking about here?
First up, gravity. The strength of the gravitational force is so perfectly dialed in that if it were different by just 1 part in 10 to the 40th power, that's a 1 with 40 zeros after it, the universe would have been a total disaster. It would have either expanded so fast that stars couldn't form, or it would have just collapsed back in on itself. Either way, we wouldn't be here. And then you've got the cosmological constant. This is the force that's driving the expansion of the universe. Get this, its value is fine-tuned to 1 part in 10 to the 120th power. I mean, it's just an insane level of precision. If that number were off by even the smallest, most microscopic sliver, the universe would be completely hostile to life.
But this one might just take the cake. The great physicist Sir Roger Penrose calculated the odds of the universe starting out in its highly ordered, low-entropy state just by chance. The number he came up with is 1 in 10 to the power of 10 to the 123. You can't even write that number out. There aren't enough atoms in the universe to do it. To call that number astronomical is frankly the understatement of the century.
Now here's a really crucial point. The term fine-tuning isn't some loaded philosophical phrase. It's a neutral scientific term. It just means that the range of values for these physical constants that allow for life to exist is incredibly, exquisitely narrow. This is an observed fact of physics. The real question is, how do we explain it? So once you accept this fact of fine-tuning, you have to ask why. Proponents of the design argument lay out a really simple, logical path to try and find the best explanation. The whole argument really boils down to 3 possibilities. The fine-tuning is either because of physical necessity, meaning the universe just had to be this way, or it's due to pure chance, meaning we just won an unbelievable cosmic lottery, or it's due to intelligent design. The logic then simply works by seeing which of these explanations actually makes sense.
Okay, so let's break that down. Why rule out necessity and chance? Well, physical necessity doesn't seem to work because, as far as we know, there's no law of physics that says these constants must have the exact values they do. And chance, well, we just saw the odds. They're so outrageously small that saying it happened by chance just isn't seen as a reasonable option.
But of course, an argument this big doesn't go unchallenged. It's faced some really strong objections, so let's put it to the test and see how it holds up. The first big objection is something called the anthropic principle. It basically says, hey, we shouldn't be surprised the universe is fit for life, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be here to be surprised in the first place. But the rebuttal to this is the famous firing squad analogy. Imagine 100 expert marksmen are ordered to shoot you. They all fire, and they all miss. You wouldn't just get up and say, well, of course they missed, otherwise I wouldn't be here to notice. No way. You'd immediately suspect the whole thing was a setup. Okay, another really popular idea is the multiverse. Maybe there are an infinite number of universes out there, and with that many chances, it was inevitable that one like ours would eventually exist. The problem is, there's zero direct scientific evidence for a multiverse, and it leads to some really weird conclusions. It's actually far more probable, statistically speaking, for just a single self-aware brain to pop into existence out of nowhere, a Boltzmann brain, than it is for a whole, vast, finely tuned universe like ours. It's a bizarre thought. And that brings us to maybe the most famous objection of all. This one comes from the biologist Richard Dawkins, and he calls it the central argument of his book, The God Delusion.
The question is pretty straightforward. If you say the complex universe needs a designer, then doesn't that designer have to be even more complex? And if so, who designed the designer? The idea here is that you're not solving the problem, you're just creating an even bigger one. But the response to this is that it kind of misunderstands how we reason about things. First, you don't need an explanation of the explanation for it to be the best one. Think about it. An archaeologist can find an arrowhead and know it was designed even if they have no idea who the designer was. And second, if you demand an explanation for every explanation, you get stuck in an endless loop where nothing can ever be explained, which would basically make science impossible.
And here's the other key point. The objection assumes that a designer must be complex. But traditionally, a divine mind is understood to be a remarkably simple thing, a non-physical consciousness without any parts. The ideas of that mind can be incredibly complex, for sure, but the mind itself is simple. Critics say that Dawkins is confusing the complexity of a person's thoughts with the person themselves.
So, after running through all of that, where do we land? We're back to that fundamental question. Given the absolutely staggering fine-tuning of our universe, what is the best explanation?
Now, this is really fascinating. Some philosophers and scientists have used a mathematical tool called Bayesian probability to analyze this. And what they've found is that the evidence for fine-tuning is so incredibly strong that even if you start out thinking a designer is really, really unlikely, the evidence alone is enough to boost the probability of design to over 99.99%.
So, if the evidence points to a designer, what can we say about them? Well, the fine-tuning seems to suggest an entity that's immaterial, existing beyond space and matter. It would have to be unimaginably intelligent and powerful to set up the universe with such incredible precision. And the very act of choosing to create a universe fit for life suggests a personal being with a purpose.
In the end, the fine-tuning of the universe leaves us with a profound puzzle. We're faced with the sheer unlikelihood of our own existence. So I'll leave you with this question. When you look at the odds stacked against us, at this cosmic lottery that seems to be rigged in our favor, what do you think is the most rational conclusion?